Hello again. The last step in your journey on drug calculations is how to infuse a medication. I just put that backwards. Let me fix that. Alright. So we're going to figure out how to give a medication over time. So now we're dealing with a clock. So we've got a nice little clock. We're having to give medication over time. So this becomes a big question for a lot of people, and really it's nothing more than just adding on to what we've already done. So there's nothing fancy or in particular that has to be done. It's pretty straightforward. Let's just go with an example here. The doctor is ordering you to give 2 milligrams of a medication for every minute that passes. 2 milligrams should enter that patient each minute. Your dose on hand is 1 gram, 150 milliliters. So now we have to incorporate this part, and it's really not as hard as you'd think. So we'll start on the bottom like we always do, divide the bottom into the top. So that's going to have that 250 on the outside of the 1. We know that 250 won't go into 1. It won't go into 10. It won't go into 100, but it will go into 1,000, and it will go into 1,000 4 times. So if we rewrote our question, you'd still have the 2 milligrams per minute up top, but underneath you'll have 0.004 grams per milliliter. So we have a problem. This does not match that. So this is where we have to go back to that very first lesson where we talked about moving the decimal points. We want to move it from grams to milligrams. So that means we have to move 3 decimal points. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, and suddenly it looks a little bit easier because now we have it in 4 milligrams per ml. So back to our typical, nothing has changed. We're doing the same thing we always do, get rid of the things we have in common. The bottom goes on the outside of the division bracket. You will see that this comes out to 0.5. So what we know now is we have 0.5 milliliters. But the question still remains, how do we do this in time? How do you get this medication to infuse into a patient each minute? We know this is the answer, but you have to figure out how many drops to get this medication in. So in order to do that, you're going to multiply it. And the easiest way to do it is if you're using a 60 drop set, but it doesn't have to be. Now, GTT means drops per milliliter. So 60 drops, what they're saying here is 60 drops will equal 60 drops equals 1 milliliter. And so the reason why this is easier is because how many seconds are in a minute? There's 60 seconds in a minute. So we're going to make this simple and use a 60 drop set. So in order to find out your answer, for those of you that love cross multiplying, this is where this comes in at. 5 milliliters per minute. Going to get rid of what we've got in common, and we're going to multiply the 5 times the 60. So let's take this 60, put 0.5, 5 into 0, 5 into 6, 5 times 6, not into, and that gives you 30. So the only thing you're left with is drops per minute. So your answer is 30 drops per minute. Pretty easy. Let's try another one here. let's go back. Let's say your doctor has ordered, better. All right, so the doctor has ordered you to give 600 micrograms per minute of a medication. That infusion bag you have in front of you is 800 milligrams in 500 milliliters. So this looks intimidating, but we're going to start on the bottom, work our way up. So we've got things in common. Get rid of our zeros. I don't like big numbers. Take that 5, we're going to divide it. So the 5 is on the outside of the 8. 5 goes into 8 one time. That gives you a leftover of what? 3. You're going to have to put your decimal point in. Drop that 0, and that means 1.6. So you have 1.6 milligrams per milliliter right now. But if you look, you have a conversion issue here. These two are not the same. So we're going from milligrams to micrograms. So we're going to move it 3 decimal points. So it's going to be 1. We've got 1.6. We're going to change that to 1, 2, 3, and it's going to be 1,600 micrograms. So let's rewrite the question. 600 micrograms per minute. We have 1,600 micrograms per milliliter. Looks a little familiar. Get rid of what we've got in common. Hate big numbers. We can get rid of those 2 zeros because we got them the same. And now we can divide the 16 on the outside of the 6, and we can figure this out. So 16, let's go down here, 16 times 5, and that's going to give us what? 5, 6, 7, 8, so that's 80. That's way too high. So let's come down here, let's go to 3. So 6 times 3 is 18. Add the 1 there, that's 48. Let's do 16 times 4 just to make sure, and that's going to give us 64. So that's not the right thing. So we definitely want to go with 3. Sorry about that. It's quite comical. I have paid time off, but it's really not time off. I'm doing this for you guys. Alright, so we're going to subtract. So that gives you a 2. That's going to be changed to a 5. So now we have 16 into 120. We're going to have to drop down a 0 and add it in there. And 16 times, what do we want to make it? You want to do 7? 6 times 7 is 42. So that's 112. 16 times 8 is 48. So that's 128. Starting to get a little bit better. Definitely can't do it. So we're going to do it at 7. And then we're going to subtract that. So you can see it's going to come out. We always want to go 2 points out. So you've got 37 as your answer. So it's 0.37 milliliters per minute. But we're not done here. We have to change it over. So let me clean up our page here. Alright, so I cleaned this up and I kind of rewrote this out to make it a little bit easier. We now know that we're given 0.37 milliliters for each minute that the patient is with us. But we've got to figure out how many drops that's going to equal. And we don't know that yet. So you have to take 0.37 milliliters, and remember we're doing that whole cross multiplication thing where we're doing 60 drops per minute, per milliliter. And we're going to get rid of the things we have in common, and then we're going to cross multiply. So 60 times 0.37 equals 6 times 3 is 18. So bring these down, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now carry the 1, and that gives us, we've got to move our decimal points, 22.2 or 22 drops per minute as our answer. So we've got it figured out. We'll take this one more step further. I'm going to open up a brand new administration. So we're going to take what we already know, and we're going to say that the doctor has ordered you to give 4 micrograms per kilogram per minute. Ooh, so we've got a little bit more on top than what we're used to. But this is okay. We can make this work. So we're going to set this up like we did before. We're going to say that we have 200, let's do this, 200 milligrams and 250 milliliters. So, start on the bottom, never panic. Let's just get this bottom cleaned up first, like we always do. Get rid of our zeros. 25, we're going to put it on the outside of the division bracket, 25 into 20. It won't work, but you can add your decimal point, and you can add a 0. 25 will go into 200 how many times? If you said 25, and we times it by 8, then you would come up with that being 44, carry that, and that's going to give us 200. So we now know that it's 0.8 milligrams. But again, we got this conversion issue, so we're going to have to switch that. So if you remember, going milligrams to micrograms, we've got to move it decimal point. So we're going to move the decimal point 1, 2, 3. We're going to make this 800 micrograms. And that means that we can now write out our question at 4 micrograms per kilo per minute. And our dose on hand is 800 micrograms per milliliter. Okay, let me clean the page up. So now this looks a little bit more familiar, but we've still got this sketchy stuff going on up here. I always take this opportunity to figure out how much medication per the kilo. So I'm just gonna, let's say this is a 165 pound patient. So let's figure this out. We'll go ahead and do the math so you guys can practice. So 2.2 divided into 165. Remember that you do have to move your decimal point. And then wow, if I could actually draw a 0. Here we go. Put our decimal point up there. 22 will go into 165 how many times? So let's go 22, and let's make it 5 just to have a nice whole number, and that brings us out to 110. So let's take this 22 and go by 8. 2 8s are 16. That's going to give us 176. A little too high, so we're going to go with 7. 22 times 7, 14. And 2 times 7 is 14, but we have to add the 1, and that gives us 154. So I think that's about as close as we're going to get. So this is going to be a 7. 154, subtract 5 minus 4 is 1. We're going to go ahead and drop the 0. 6 minus 5 is 1. So now we have 110. What do we already know here? It'll do it 5 times. So we can, oh my, about lost my spot. So this will go 5 times, making this come out to 0. So we are at a 75 kilogram patient. Now we know for each kilo, for each and every kilo, and there's 75, we're going to get 4 mics for each one of those. So we're going to take the 75 and we're going to multiply it by 4. So that gives us 20. 7 times 4 is 28, 29, 30. So when we rewrite this out, now it's looking a little bit more manageable because it's going to be 300 mics per minute, and this looks exactly like what we did earlier. 800 mics per ml. Doesn't that look so much prettier? All right, I'm going to rewrite this out for you, get it cleaned up so we have some space. All right, so we've got this cleaned up. Again, that 165 pound patient we determined is actually 75 kilos. So for each kilo of body weight, we are giving 4 micrograms of medication. That means we're giving in total 300 mics per minute. And at the bottom we see that we have 800 mics per ml as our dose on hand. So we're going to get rid of the things we have in common. Get rid of those. And we are going to take the bottom and we're going to divide it so that the 8 is on the outside of the 3.0. 8 goes into 30 how many times? 4 8s are 32, so let's go with 3 8s or 24. That's going to give us 10. We're going to subtract. Got to make that into a 2. We're going to subtract that. That gives us 6. Take a 0. Drop it down. 8 will go into 60 how many times? If you said 7 8s or 56, you are correct. So you will see that we have a repeating number that's about to go on. All right. So 0.37 milliliters per minute is going to be our answer. So now this would be written out as 0.37 milliliters per minute. And we know that we're going to infuse that with a 60 drop per milliliter set. That's our little infusion. We're going to get rid of what we have in common. We're going to multiply, cross multiply. So 60 times 0.37 is going to give us 0, 42, 0, and I apologize, I'm at the bottom of the screen there. Ooh, wasn't. Okay, I apologize. We're down here and it's in a weird spot, so let me just rewrite this over here. So remember that 1 is further out because of the multiplication. So we're going to come out with 0, 2, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And we're going to have 2, 2, 2, 0. We've got to move it over 2 spots. So again, we have 22 drops per minute. If you got that, you've got this down pat. If you have any questions, please feel free to give me a shout in class. This is the worst it will ever get. So congratulations, you have now gotten through every single one of these drug calculations as they'll be made. So congrats, we are through this one section and I will see you in class.